from the Gies Studio Complex. Welcome to this live session with Gies College of Business at Illinois. Please check that your microphone is muted, your camera is turned on, and you are ready to engage with your classmates and colleagues. Please welcome your moderator, Kate Deering, and your instructors, Ravi, Mehta, and Ujjal Mukherjee.
Hello, and welcome everyone to today's live faculty session. My name is Kate Deering. I am an Associate Director for Recruiting and Admissions with Gies Online Programs at the Gies College of Business, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And I'm so excited to have you all with us this evening. Today's session offers an overview of the new Health Innovation Design and Entrepreneurship, or HIDE, focus area within the iMBA program. Our audience tonight includes current Gies Online students. We have Carle, Illinois College of Medicine students, as well as prospective learners exploring Gies's stackable online credentials. As we explore the HIDE content tonight, keep in mind, if you're a current iMBA student, you may select the HIDE course sequence as your focus area. IMSA students can enroll in these courses as electives, and prospective learners are welcome to take this coursework as non-degree learners. Within Gies graduate programs, we offer a portfolio of master's degrees and graduate certificates that are built for working professionals. They're flexible, they're affordable, and they're online by design. Our courses include a blend of foundational learning material on Coursera paired with engaging interactive elements like live weekly classes, group projects, faculty office hours, and rich networking opportunities. Tonight's session actually is a great example of the high engagement components of our coursework, and you'll have the chance to learn and interact with two of our incredible faculty members tonight. Before we begin, a few quick reminders. If your camera is on, thank you. Feel free to turn it on and engage with our faculty and other attendees. All participants are currently muted to minimize background noise, and if our professors invite you to speak, our team will unmute you. You can also feel free to use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question. And the chat is open. Engage with us and the professors and one another throughout our time tonight. We will also reserve some time at the end for a Q&A. Now, I'm really excited to introduce two of our top faculty members who will guide us through today's session. Ravi Mehta is a professor of business administration in the marketing area and the Joseph and Margot Lakonishak Faculty Fellow at the Gies College of Business. He is also a professor of biomedical and translational sciences at the Carle, Illinois College of Medicine. His research explores the psychology of human behavior in marketing and consumption domains, with a particular focus on creativity, technology adoption, and innovation development. His work sits at the intersection of behavioral science and market dynamics, aiming to really understand how people think, decide, and create in innovation contexts. He teaches across topics including creativity, innovation management, new product development, and marketing. He actually joined the Illinois faculty back in 2011 after completing his PhD in marketing at the University of British Columbia. He also holds an MBA from York University in Toronto and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Delhi College of Engineering in India. Ujjal Kumar Mukherjee is an associate professor of business administration at Gies College of Business and a health innovation professor at the Carle, Illinois College of Medicine. His research interests are in the domain of healthcare delivery and healthcare management. He teaches supply chain management and supply chain analytics to our business students, and as well as healthcare process and analytics to MD students at the medical school. He has an MBA from XLRI in India, an MS in statistics, and a PhD in operations management from University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. So with that, really please enjoy the session tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to our professors. Enjoy.
All right, everyone. Good to see you, and then welcome to our session. My name is Ravi Mehta, and I'm joined here by Dr. Mukherjee. All right, so let's get started. So we are super excited to have you here. And then Kate, thank you for that wonderful introduction for us. So thank you. What we will do is we'll talk about this new focus area we are launching today, which is healthcare innovation design and entrepreneurship. What we will do is we'll talk about what this would entail and who this focus area is for, what you can hope to learn from this, what skills, what you can take back to your workspaces, and that is what we'll be talking about today. So it is essentially a broad overview of what this focus area would look like. To start off, I want to tell you that this focus area, which is about healthcare innovation, design, and entrepreneurship, is a collaborative effort across the different units across the university. Of course, Gies College of Business is leading this effort, but we are doing so in collaboration with Carle, Illinois College of Medicine, Mayo Clinic, and then Siebel Center for Design. And that is the interesting part about this particular focus area, because the things we're going to talk about in these courses or this focus area speaks three different languages. We talk about business, we are going to talk about healthcare, and we are going to talk about design thinking. So, and this was a very interesting thing because we needed professors who could speak these three languages. And then what we realized very quickly is even working with College of Medicine or Design Center, it was professors in business who could actually bring everything together. So what you will see is this focus area would be led by professors from Gies College of Business, but who can speak the language of healthcare, which actually combines a common thread between our thinking and our work, and then design thinking. So there would be 4 faculty members who will be leading this focus area with 3 different courses that would be offered. My name is Ravi Mehta. Kate already introduced me to you guys, so thank you, Kate, for that. And as she also mentioned, my expertise lies in consumer psychology approach to innovation, and then with particular focus on healthcare. Then we have Dr. Ujjal Mukherjee, whose expertise lies in data-driven analytics approach to healthcare processes. And both of us have joint appointments in College of Medicine here at the university. Another of our professors would be Dr. Sridhar Sheshadri, who has expertise in supply chain management and process management, and he applies this in the context of healthcare. So he would be working with us. And then there's Professor Elias Corpus, who is about entrepreneurship. His focus area or his expertise is in entrepreneurship, but he applies design thinking principles to that particular context. He works very closely with Design Center. Dr. Sridhar Sheshadri works very closely, or actually has a joint appointment in medical school. So if you see, all 4 of us have healthcare thread common, that runs common through all our work and what the courses we teach. And we also speak, of course, business language and then design thinking approach. Also, you will see there would be a lot of data-driven approaches, analytics. You will see that in these 3 courses that together come together to in this focus area. All right. The structure of this course, I want to talk very briefly about the structure, how this focus area would look like, and then we will talk about each of these courses separately in a little more detail. So this focus area would combine 3 different courses. The first course would focus on identity, the second one on Innovate, and the third one is Implement. Now, if you think about this, this is how innovation happens, irrespective of whatever context you are in. You start by identifying a right problem, then you go through the innovation processes, and then you implement the innovation processes or innovation you have developed. How do you bring it to the market? So we are going to cover all 3 aspects in identifying a component of this focus area, which would be the course that will be led by Dr. Sridhar Sheshadri and myself. We would start by understanding, healthcare ecosystem, and then we'll get into understanding how do you identify the right needs and select the right opportunity for innovation. The second course would be about Innovate, where we will talk about models of healthcare innovation and we'll run through the whole new product development process. This course would be led by Professor Ujjal Mukherjee and Professor Elias Corpus. The final one, which is about Implement, we would have, again, 2 components there. We would talk about business strategy and new venture design. how do you bring this innovation to market? How can people adopt innovation you have created within healthcare domain, of course. We'll talk about that, and then we will wrap up this focus area with the discussion on emerging trends and how we see the future of healthcare delivery would be, how things are changing and what we can do about that as innovators is what we will talk about and wrap up this whole focus area. This last course would be led by Professor Elias Corpus, then Professor Sridhar Seshadri, and I will do the last bit in this course, and we will wrap up our focus area. So this is how this is gonna go forward, this focus area. But now the big question was, we started working on this about 2 years back, started thinking about this whole idea about healthcare innovation, design, and entrepreneurship. Now, the first question was, why do we need something like this? Why do we need these courses? Why do we need a focus area? Why do we need our learners to know more about these things? And that is where I want, Dr. Ujjal Mukherjee would talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thank you, Ravi. Thanks a lot. This is a great introduction, and thanks to Kate for amazing introduction. Thank you, and thanks to all the participants. So my name is Ujjal Mukherjee, and what I'll do is, with Ravi's introduction, I will take you through the challenges and opportunities of healthcare delivery, and which was primarily the motivation of why we started thinking about this focus area and this 3-course series, Identify, Innovate, and Implement. And this two slides that I'll be sharing with you, and the topics that I'll be sharing with you actually speaks to all the 3 courses, right? So the challenges is something that is the driving force of why we need to know more about healthcare processes and healthcare design, and how we are going to address some of those and what opportunities exist. So what I will present is basically a few of the challenges. It's not exhaustive by any means, and some evidence related to those challenges, and what opportunities exist to innovate and solve some of these problems or challenges, or mitigate some of these challenges using these opportunities and leveraging these opportunities. So one of the big challenge in healthcare delivery today is inequity in access, right? So there's obviously healthcare processes and healthcare treatment, right? However, it's not accessible to the entire population. There are subsegments of the population who do not have adequate access to healthcare, right? So one example is, or one piece of evidence is rural areas, and this is I'm talking of rural areas in US, right? Have 35% fewer doctors per capita than urban areas, right? And think of this from a global perspective, right? From developing nations and other less resourced regions, this challenge is even graver, right? So what opportunities exist, right? So in terms of technologies, telehealth platforms, mobile clinics, remote diagnostics, multilingual patient portals, right? And many more, right? So these are the opportunities that exist, but just because the opportunities exist doesn't mean that these problems can be mitigated. So these are the technologies, but we need to create the social system around it, and we need to take a socio-technical systems perspective on this, that how do you leverage these technologies to help benefit the sections of the society that need healthcare access, right? And that is where our courses will be focusing a lot on healthcare processes and how do you make innovation accessible to a much larger section of the society. The second major problem that is emerging, especially after COVID, and not only because of COVID, but also because of many other reasons, right? So one is workforce shortage. There's a huge workforce shortage, nurse shortage, and if you have paid attention to recent media related to healthcare, doctor shortage, nurse shortage, capacity constraints is a big issue, right? And this affects rural areas and underserved areas much more than better served areas or urban areas. So rural areas have fewer than 40 primary care physicians per 100,000 people, and over 130 rural hospitals closed between 2010 to 2021 in the United States, right? So what can be done about it? and there's no easy solution to this. There's an ecosystem of solutions that has to work together to solve this problem, right? So one is AI powered clinic. Can you leverage AI technologies to reduce cost of care, to make care more accessible to a larger section of the population? Can you augment the capacity of doctors and nurses using technologies like virtual scribes, automation, NLP, generative AI, right? Remote training, and there's a lot of exciting developments that are happening there. Then cost and affordability, right? Healthcare cost has been increasing. Nearly half of rural hospitals reported losses in 2022, and that's one of the reasons why rural hospitals closed. And if you look at the healthcare cost increase in the United States, it has been way more than the general CPI increase, right? So what can you do about it? How can you reduce cost? There's value-based payment methods, different innovative funding technologies or funding methods, right? Funding policies, right? So price transparency apps, predictive analytics, value-based payment. So all these things combined can help. But again, we need to think about how can we make these things work in cohesion and in tandem so that it can solve these problems. Then fragmentation of care, right? There's many different healthcare systems. EHRs don't often talk to each other. That slows down the care coordination. Broadband access, around 20% of the rural areas in the United States do not have sufficient broadband access. So how can you solve this, right? So there are technologies which can be leveraged to solve this. Then quality and safety issues. And that's a problem or a challenge that needs to be addressed in any case, right? So around 10 to 15% of diagnoses are incorrect or delayed, right? And so what can you do? Can you have AI systems to augment decision making, right? We are doing a project here at Carle College to improve dementia detection using AI technologies, right? So we are doing some projects, we are doing some initiatives which are geared towards that, and some of those will bring into the course, right? Another big challenge is chronic disease and prevention, right? And again, it affects the rural population or the underserved population much more. Rural residents have 30 to 40% higher risk of heart disease and stroke. And life expectancy in rural areas is 3 years shorter than in cities. And if you look at it from a global scale, the life expectancy from the best managed healthcare system to the not so well managed healthcare system, the range of life expectancy is more than 15 years. Right? The gap is more than 15 years. So what can you do to address this? Like, so the opportunities are wearable sensors, text-based apps, population health dashboards, remote patient monitoring, and these are only just a few of the opportunities. This is by no means exhaustive, right? Another is maternal health and women's health. Over half of rural counties have no maternity wards in or OBGYN departments, right? So what can be done about it? Like, can there be remote prenatal monitoring and care, education of the patients, right? Remote health, home health care, right? AI-assisted risk screening. Technology and cybersecurity. So as we are talking of all these technologies and using data to solve some of these problems, there is always the issue of cybersecurity, right? How do you ensure that all this can be done in a manner that it does not jeopardize or does not put the patient's data at risk, right? Again, there are solutions that we'll talk about in this course, right? Public health and equity. Rural incomes are 25% lower than national average, right? Again, and that's the reality that is there. While healthcare solutions cannot solve the root problem, however, it can take that into account and design a system that can actually be more equitable in nature, right? Then healthcare and hospital capacity. We talked about the capacity again. There are technologies like home healthcare. I'm working with OSF here on home healthcare projects, and we have implemented in OSF, OSF has implemented home healthcare in a very successful manner. We are studying that, and we are kind of trying to see how to augment that, right? So telehealth and virtual triage, remote patient monitoring, and these are just some of the opportunities and challenges that can help us address that. And we are going to, and this will form an input to what we are going to do in this 3-course series. With that, we will take a deeper dive into these 3 courses independently. And for that, I will hand it over to Ravi to talk about Identify part of it.
Yeah, thank you again, Ujjal. So if you see, this was very small sample of issues we are facing today in healthcare delivery space, and then this is why that was the big motivation for us when we were working with these Carle College of Medicine to understand we face these problems every day. These patients, users, doctors, physicians. And then that is where this whole course, the idea for this focus area was born essentially. And then what we'll do is in these three courses, that is what we'll do. We'll see, identify these problems, and we'll see how do we solve these problems? How can we innovate to resolve these problems? So the thing is, the first one will start with identifying the right problem. So each course would be divided into two MOOCs. So the first MOOC or the first course would be understanding the healthcare ecosystem. This would be led by Professor Sridhar Sheshadri. So what he will do is what we will do in this first MOOC is understand the ecosystem, where the innovation, where the opportunities and challenges lie, and then how can we create innovation to address those challenges. Essentially, what we'll do is we'll start by understanding why healthcare domain is unique. Why do we need to talk about innovation separately in healthcare space? How is it different from product innovation, for example, or any other kind of innovation? What are the challenges, goals? And then we'll go into three really critical aspects of healthcare domain. One, we'll talk about different structures that exist within the healthcare ecosystem. We'll talk about hospital management and trends. How do we integrate these different structures to deliver a cohesive healthcare? What are different approaches where we can match different forms to the function? Then we'll talk about process innovation, healthcare process innovation, and then how we can improve or are there opportunities for innovation within the process, healthcare process stages. For example, we'll talk about variability, how variability impacts standardization, performance, quality, learning, things like those. And then we'll talk about supply chain. That's a big aspect of healthcare. And the important thing is most of us don't even think about these things that underlie this healthcare delivery. So this would be our first MOOC of course one, which will set up the system or set up the structure platform for understanding healthcare ecosystem. Next, once we understand that, we will go into our next MOOC, which would be about identifying healthcare system, identifying the opportunities for healthcare systems. So for example, we will start with understanding, we'll bring together what are different types of innovation, what are drivers and challenges of innovation within the healthcare domain. And then we'll talk about why is need identification important. Ujjal just listed so many problems. Do we really need to have a process for need identification? What's the significance of it? And that is what we'll talk about in this second MOOC of course one. Remember, whatever we do at the front end of innovation during identification processes or concept generation processes actually locks in about 60 to 70% of the cost of innovation development. And it's critical to any innovation development process, and that is what we will talk about. Then we'll go into problem definition and how do we engage stakeholders? How do we bring everyone on board? Healthcare system or healthcare delivery is a complex system. There are different stakeholders. How do we bring them? How do we talk to them? How do we prioritize their needs? Things like those. Then I will give you, and I will lead this MOOC, then I will give you tools and methods which we can use to identify the problems. Finally, we'll wrap up this MOOC with validation, prioritization, and selection, where we will talk about need assessment and validation. We'll talk about how do we prioritize different needs. Think about this, as Ujjal was talking about, there are about 10 different needs we just talked about. Which one should you work on today? The thing is, resources are limited. We cannot work on everything today. So how do we bring everything together? How do we choose which problems to work on? How do we prioritize that, and how do we select? That is what we will do in this second MOOC of course one, and that is where we will wrap up our first course and then go into the process of innovation. Once we have identified the opportunity, then we will go into how do we run through the innovation processes. That would again be led by Professor Mukherjee here and Elias Corpus. So Ujjal, let's talk a little bit more about the Innovate part.
Thank you. So the second course that will be offered, there were questions on chat, so I responded to that. The first course is being offered from end of August, which is the Identify. The name is although different. So the second course is being scheduled from mid of October, so the second half of fall, and I'll be leading that course. So that Innovate part again has several modules. Right, so we have 8 modules, like it's the same structure. So the first module looks at structured process of healthcare innovation, like understand the value chain of healthcare, who are the stakeholders, right? And also we will look at segmentation of the healthcare market. So when you're talking of a product development or a process development in healthcare, what segment of the healthcare market and what need it is focused on and it's addressing. Then we are looking at product positioning, that how do you position the product, which will have discussion about competition, competing products, competing solutions, competing technologies, the market requirements, customer requirements, and the patient's requirements. And in healthcare, as you know, when you talk about customers, there are multi-level customers, so you will have to address the needs for these multi-level customers, starting from the healthcare organization to the doctors, nurses, to the final patients, right? So the second module will look at product development processes. So we'll look at product development process. What are the general product development processes? What kind of frameworks we can use? We will use frameworks for concept generation, concept selection, product architecture design, that when you are designing a product, depending on the need that it is satisfying and what kind of product it is, what kind of architecture it should have. Is it an integrated product or it is a modular design, right? Are you talking of a platform design in different modules? So, and if you are thinking of modular design, how do you really have a modular design there, right? So the design structure matrix and how does it relate to product performance and the future of the product, right? Then we will talk about the industrial design process, prototyping, and how do you actually make the product from the concept to a physical product, right? So then we will talk about project management, that when you are doing all this, there will be many projects and mini projects that one has to manage. So what are the different types of project managements that one can think about? A structured project management, like stage gate project management, or we are talking of an agile project management, right? How do you schedule some of the activities, right? We will talk about predictive versus adaptive approaches in project management. Then we will talk about economic evaluation of innovation projects, that all these things that we are talking about, does it make economic sense, right? What kind of ROI we can think about, right? What are pricing strategies, demand forecasting strategies, right? Cash flow and net present value of innovations, ROI and internal rate of return. And finally, risk analysis, right? So this will be the 4 modules, which will be MOOC 1, and then there is MOOC 2. Again, we move from product to process now. So we'll talk about process innovation and analysis. So MOOC 1 was more focused towards product. Now we move to process. We'll look at process diagrams. We'll look at process analysis, statistical process control as it applies to healthcare processes. We will talk about data analytics for healthcare innovation. We'll talk about what types of data, how do we get those data. We'll talk about some analysis techniques. So this part of the course will be somewhat hands-on, analytical in nature, right? Exploratory data analysis, predictive data analysis, hypothesis testing, and then design of experiments. Design of experiments is a very, very key element of healthcare innovation, because you think of any healthcare innovation, either process or product like pharmaceutical drugs or medical devices, we need to have clinical trials. How do you design those clinical trials, right? So that's what we are going to talk about, right? And then we'll talk about entrepreneurship in healthcare innovation, and we'll talk about leadership and stakeholder engagement and funding of healthcare projects, right? And then finally, we are going to talk about scalability and market innovation, like design thinking, lean startups, open innovation, crowdsourcing, and ethical concerns, right? So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly take you through a few slides just to give you a snapshot preview of some of the concepts. Is by no means exhaustive that we are going to talk about. Like we talked about innovations drive healthcare improvement, right? So we'll talk about what kind of innovations have historically driven healthcare improvement. Think about vaccines starting in 1976, going into insulin therapy in 1921, and then medical imaging, and then minimally invasive surgeries. From there, robotic surgeries in the 2000s, 2010s, right? All this Da Vinci robot and different types of robotic surgeries, and then gene editing, gene technology, and then AI, ML, printing, 3D printing, and all these things. And as we go towards 2010 and beyond, some of those technologies are still emerging, and we can think about innovations using those technologies, right? So we will talk about a structured innovation cycle in healthcare. Like we will talk about diagnose, discover, determine, develop, and deliver. I'm not going into the details of each of these individual components within this, but this is a structured process that we are going to analyze with case studies and with examples and with hands-on mini projects. That how do you go through a structured cycle of healthcare innovation in a real life scenario, right? So some of the things like identify gaps, stakeholder inputs, evaluate options, concept development, regulatory approvals, that's very important, manufacturing logistics, manufacturing approvals, manufacturing processes, market introduction, market surveillance, and things like that, right? Again, technology innovation is just the first step. We talked about the socio-technical aspect of healthcare innovation. Right, so the technology is just one of the elements. How do you build the social environment and social elements around technology so that technology can be adopted and utilized in the best manner possible? So think of the example of surgical robot. It's an amazing technology. It's very expensive. The robotic surgeries are at least 20-25% more expensive than manual laparoscopic surgeries. And I have studied robotic surgeries in details in many different hospital settings. But you need a lot of social elements around it to make that happen and realize the benefits from it. And if you look at the data, so many hospitals have successfully implemented it and many hospitals have not. And the difference lies not in the technology, but in the supportive infrastructure, the training and the skill development, the comparative effectiveness study and understanding the cost benefit. Right? So those are the things that we'll talk about, right? Then we'll talk about product development processes like concept development, system level development, detailed design, testing, approval, prototypes, different levels of prototypes, regular production, right? Then economic evaluation, we will talk about both qualitative and quantitative approaches. In the quantitative approach, we will talk about some financial metrics. In the qualitative approach, we will talk about pharma objectives, competitive positioning of the market, and how do we evaluate the socio-economic factors around it, right? Like input pricing strategies. So there are many inputs that goes into it. How do you use these inputs to come up with a pricing strategy that's beneficial not only for the firm but also for the patients and the customers, and therefore can be a successful innovation, right? Then we'll talk about process and process analysis. So this is one process map, process diagram, specifically a swim lane diagram of a specific emergency department case. That how do we create this map and how do we use this to identify gaps in processes, in capacities, in capabilities, right? And how do we analyze this? So we'll talk about a lot of process matrix. How do we identify bottlenecks? How do we solve some of those bottlenecks, right? And we will also use statistical process control, that how do we collect this data from these processes, all healthcare processes generate data, how do we collect this data and use that data to identify which process is working in a stable manner and which processes need improvement. So those are things that we'll talk about, right? And then finally, we'll talk about design of experiments. Again, I'm not going into details of a design of experiment, but this is something that we'll talk in the context of clinical trials, and how do we use design of experiments to design clinical trials, right? So with that, we come to the last part of it, implement, and I will hand it over to Ravi again to take you through the implement phase of.
Right. Thank you, Ujjal, again. So the thing is, so we started with identifying the opportunities. We would run through the innovation processes. And the third thing we are going to talk about, or the third course, would be about implement. implementation of business strategy. Now, this module or this course would be led by this MOOC would be led by Professor Elias Corpus. Now, the big question is, we're talking about healthcare innovation. We understand identifying opportunity is important. We understand innovation is important. That is what this is about. Why are we talking about business strategy? Why do we need business, when we are talking about innovation? And that is what is an important part. And we bring this to everyone or each of the learners here. Think about this. Most of the time when we talk about innovation, if you go to engineering domain or even medical school or design, when they talk about innovation, they talk about creating innovations successfully. What we are going to talk about is creating successful innovation, and those two are different. The thing is, an innovation becomes successful not when you have created something. It becomes successful when someone finds value in it, someone adopts your innovation. And then it is not only a product that we adopt. What makes the adoption work is the things that work along with the product. And that is what we'll talk about in creating business strategy. We'll talk about macroeconomic factors, we'll talk about industry, we'll talk about competition. And then you realize competition, most of the time when we talk about competition, we think about other products. But that's not true. In healthcare, most of the time what we are competing with is existing habits, how people do things now. How do we work with that? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how do we design the business, what's the value proposition, revenue models, go-to-market strategy. Then how do we write business plans? Again, nothing, you won't be able to launch your own business or you won't be able to bring this to market unless you have money to do so. How do you write business plans? And then how can you finance your healthcare ventures? We'll get into details about that too. And this section would be led by Professor Elias Corpus, who's an expert in entrepreneurship and also in design thinking. So he'll be leading that. Then the last part of this focus area would be, we'll talk about emerging trends and where we are headed. It is all going to be about, two things. We'll talk about technology and we'll also talk about the human side of things. So on the technology side, we'll talk about new and emerging trends and how things are moving. We'll talk about AI and ML models. We'll talk about what is driving their innovation. What are different frameworks? How do we bring AI and machine learning into enhancing access, efficiency, and outcomes? That is what we'll be talking about. Then we'll talk about the emerging business models on the whole care continuum, starting from the hospital. Once the patient sets the foot in the hospital, to the whole journey someone has to go through. We'll talk about that. Then, important and the most critical aspect, and because I'm a behavioral guy, so I'll talk more about this. I'll talk about, behavior-driven trends and innovation. Think about this, how we are moving forward. It is not going to be about healthcare systems anymore. We are going to be talking about health systems. And there's a difference between a healthcare system and a health system. We'll talk about how we as individuals, our behavior drives health behaviors, health delivery. We'll talk about, behavior innovation or behaviors as core innovation strategy. We as innovators, what can we do about that? We'll talk about different aspects like prototyping behavior, designing with empathy. And then we'll talk about how human behavior is going to drive future of innovation. The last part is going to be about social context. Social determinants of health is what I will introduce. Think about this. If I'm food insecure, how am I going to deliver healthcare to that person? We'll talk about these social factors. We'll talk about your living conditions, your transportation, for example. If you don't have reliable transportation to get to the hospital, to your clinics, how are we going to deliver healthcare? And this is what is going to define health systems going forward. And this is what we'll talk about. We'll talk about empathy. We'll talk about co-creating this innovation with communities. And then we'll talk about how the system's changing, how the policy is changing, how we are already seeing institutional shift. And then we'll wrap this whole course up and the whole focus area up with talking about how social determinants of health are going to be at the core of future of healthcare innovation. And that is where we will end our the third course and this whole focus group. And then Ujjal, let's conclude this. So I'll hand it over back to you.
Thank you, Ravi. So in conclusion, we have been, so what we have tried to do in this session particularly is to give you an overview of how the program is structured, right? How this focus area is structured by 3 different courses. Although they are different, they are all related to each other, right? The first course, we are looking at identify and all the processes that goes into identify. Then we are going into innovate and all the different processes and technologies and skills that go into innovate, and then implementation. And so we believe that it's a comprehensive set of concepts and skills that we will be able to deliver through these 3 courses as a part of this healthcare innovation focus area, right? So the question naturally is, who is this aimed towards, right? Who is the audience of this, right? So obviously there's audience can be from many different walks of life, many different professional areas, but all related to healthcare, right? So healthcare providers can be one, those who are more focused towards innovation, right? So this Carle, Illinois College of Medicine is one of the early colleges in medical education, which aims to deliver MD education using technology, right? So it's a technology-driven medical education, and one of the aims is to create innovators providers, right? So obviously healthcare providers will be one. Regulators, so we will we will discuss quite a bit about regulation. However, the processes and the skills, like the statistical skills, the process control skills that we will be delivering, regulators hopefully will find it very useful, right? Pharmaceutical industry professionals, right? Like clinical trials, statistical process control, process management, product development, all these are very pertinent and relevant to anybody who is working either in the pharmaceutical industry or the medical device industry, or anybody who wants to enter these sectors, right? So professionals who are intending to enter healthcare industry, right, in different capacities, right? All healthcare organizations are focusing on how do we improve processes and use data to deliver better care in the future, right? So therefore, clinical trial managers will be one, and there may be many more. We haven't been exhaustive here again, right? So what's the learning value through these three course program, right? So we trying to group this learning value into three different groups, right? One is sense making, to understand why we are doing some of the things that we are doing, right, or what we are doing. So how do you understand the healthcare ecosystem, and how does it relate to my work per se, right? Or how is it going to change my work in the future? So that understanding, sense making of what we are doing, how the environment and the surrounding developments relate to my work, right? Making sense of policy and regulation, right? Why a policy exists? What are the implications of those? How can that be improved? And not only just broad level legislative policies, we are talking even about like hospital policies, right? When hospitals adopt certain policy, what are the implications of those, right? So let's say, for example, we are talking about surgical robots and robot-assisted surgeries, right? What kind of policies that a hospital can adopt so that in terms of training the doctors, in terms of scheduling patients on the surgical robot, so that it can actually leverage the best benefits of the technology, right? So interpreting system-wide challenges, how do you understand, identify, and interpret system-wide challenges? So that's one group, sense-making. The second group is skill development, right? So project management, financial decisions, innovation tools like product and process analysis, data analysis, statistical process analysis, clinical experiment design, right? So those are all skill development. So those skills we will be able to impart through this 3 course. And then finally, improve judgment, right? So how do you prioritize under constraints? How do you lead innovation with a foresight? How do you forecast the future and try to make sense of the future, right? So this is what we feel are the broad learning value from this program. And then finally, what's the delivery mode? How are you going to deliver this? As we have explained, there are 3 courses. It has the usual iMBA course structure. Each course consists of 2 MOOCs, and each MOOC consists of 4 modules. So each MOOC consists of 4 modules. So each course has 8 modules, right? And divided into MOOC 1 and MOOC 2, right? So we will have Coursera video lectures. We'll have synchronous live sessions and discussions where we'll be discussing more practical examples, case studies, and projects and things like that. We'll also briefly discuss the concepts. We'll have individual small projects. We'll have other elements like team projects, assignments, quizzes, and some other elements that we haven't yet contemplated here, right? So this is how we'll be delivering this. So hopefully with this, we have been able to cover broadly our thought process in designing and developing this focus area divided into these 3 very interrelated, integrated courses, and how we are structuring these courses and what you can expect to learn from these courses, right? So with that, what we are going to do is we are going to thank you for patiently listening to us, and we will take any question and answer, and I'll hand it over to Kate to moderate this part of the session.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that wonderful overview of the HIDE focus area. This is so exciting to see all of this new content that's coming out of Gies online programs. First of all, if you do have questions, we'd love to hear you live. So feel free to raise your hand and we can call on you there. But I have a few questions that people submitted in their registration form. So I just wanted to jump to one along the lines of your last slide in kind of how we deliver information. And the question is, will there be opportunities to work on real world projects in healthcare startups or organizations, for instance, like, in partnership with Mayo Clinic, possibly, in this focus area? And then they actually go on to say, especially for innovations targeting behavioral change or patient engagement. But just even in general, if you can just touch on kind of what is that going to look like in this coursework?
Sure, I can respond to this. So what I'll say is and this is a focus area within the broad umbrella of iMBA and the master's program. It's not, as of now, an independent master's program of itself. So you had to be cognizant about the amount of work and effort that we can expect the students and the learners to devote towards this focus area, right? So as a structured part, we don't have practical project designed to be a part of this focus area. However, what we'll do is we will have small projects and we will have case studies that we will discuss. And of course, we will try to make those projects and case studies as much practical as possible. But as a structured element in the course, given that it's a focus area within the broad master's programs that we deliver, right? We don't have, as of now, industry project.
Okay, but that sounds good. Another question that we have is, so thinking about kind of the outcomes, would this program provide the necessary knowledge and skills to kind of transition from something like engineering, for instance, or other backgrounds into a healthcare or biotech, health tech kind of role?
So yeah, I can take that one. So absolutely, right? So the thing is, what these 3 courses are going to do together is give you a strong overview of healthcare innovation. And then both Ujjal and I are actually engineers, and we made that transition. Of course, it would require a little more than just the 3 courses, but yes, it will put you on the right path. If you are going to, it'll give you, understanding of the basics, what is needed to move into another space right from engineering. Especially, you'll see most of the courses, and especially what you'll work with me. We will work on the mindset. You'll see the shift in the mindset. We would move away from being product and innovation focused to more on the human aspect of things. How do we apply innovation? How do we bring this innovation, offer value to people who need it? And then I can promise you, yes, that would be the mindset shift you will see through these 3 courses, and would set you on the right path if you're looking to make that transition. Absolutely. Kate, back to you.
Sounds good. So for some of our maybe prospective learners that are here and have never taken a course, kind of, which is a little different than being a current learner, how does the program just in general encourage collaboration within, between, participants in the classes from different professional backgrounds? How does that actually happen within the coursework?
So I can take this. So there are many elements that are built into the course delivery where we actually encourage team participation. So the two most common elements are team projects. So we'll have team projects where all the learners will be put into different teams, right? And then they will have a project that they have to work on. It may be a case study based project, or it may be just a problem-driven project. So that's one where the learners can collaborate with each other. The second element is when we deliver the synchronous sessions, the live sessions, right? In the live sessions, we usually have group discussions, right? We will divide the learners in the live session into different groups, and we'll have group discussions. And then the learners also participate in the live session discussion after the small group discussions, right? So that's how the learners can collaborate. From my experience, I teach a course in the iMBA, IMSM. So the current course is Operations Management with Professor Gropesh Anand, right? And in that, I know that many of the learners get to collaborate with each other, get to know each other, and they connect then on social media, LinkedIn, and they get to develop, professional relationships that can be useful, right?
Great. That's a great overview of just, the high engagement components, within our coursework that you touched on, as far as the group projects, those live sessions where you're interacting with our faculty members as well as other students in the program. So thank you for explaining that. So I think we've gotten most of the questions. This is kind of your last chance if you have any questions here, and we're going to kind of wrap this up. But I just wanted to say thank you for everyone as far as joining us this evening. I hope you really kind of learned a little bit about what is going to be covered in this HIDE coursework. Just as a kind of a quick reminder, I know there was definitely some questions about this in the chat. But if you're a current student, you can please reach out to isupport@illinois.edu with any follow-up questions. We'll have some specific guidance on course selection that's really best to come and be directed to our student and academic success specialists. So hopefully you've met with them before and you're well aware of how amazing they are, but reach out to them and they can really help you with working this into your degree plan or any questions that you have there. For our CI Med students, thanks for being here as well. You can connect with Roberto Galvez at rgalvez@illinois.edu if you have specific questions on how to take this coursework and incorporate into your current plan. Lastly, prospective students, you can email us at giesonline@illinois.edu or reach out to myself. I'm happy to have a conversation to learn about how to apply to the HIDE coursework. Our upcoming deadline for degree programs like the iMBA program is August 7th, or you could start in this HIDE coursework this August as a non-degree learner if you apply by July 3rd. One more thing, there is a QR code on this screen that you can scan if you'd like to quickly connect with us in the near future. With that, I don't see any remaining questions, so we're going to wrap this up. I want to send a huge thank you to Professors Mukherjee and Mehta for leading our session this evening. It was super fun and informative, and I hope everybody enjoyed their time tonight. So with that, I think we will close it out.
We want to thank all of you for being here, and I hope you benefited somewhat by listening to us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and hopefully we'll see you in our classrooms, right? All right, take care everyone.